All right, welcome back to the deep dive. And I have to be honest with you. When I first looked at the stack of research for today, I genuinely thought there was a mix-up in the files.
I can see why. It does look a little strange.
It really does. I mean, usually we're tearing apart business trends or, dissecting history. But today's a bit different. We're looking at a piece of narrative art. It's a song titled Grateful for the Ground by an artist called Ti-Fi. And this is a really big, but we're not reviewing it like music critics.
No, and that's the key thing here. We're not here to, read the guitar solo or critique the production. We can touch on the sound later, but that's not the goal. We're here because the source material, especially the Legacy of Strength synopsis and that writer's room transcript, it treats this song as a map.
A map.
A literal topography of how a human being moves from a state of, absolute fracture to a state of safety.
And that's exactly what hooked me. I was reading that transcript where the artist is breaking down the track.
Yeah.
And they call the writing process a forensic tool.
Which is such a cool way to put it.
It's amazing, right? A forensic tool. It implies they're investigating a crime scene, but the crime scene is their own past.
Precisely. And the crime scene here is a background of exploitation and trafficking, but the investigation isn't about, who did it. It's all about how did I survive it? And the answer that the sources give us is, it's surprising. It's not about willpower. It's about what they call the infrastructure of safety.
That phrase, that's our North Star for this, isn't it? Infrastructure of safety. Sounds like, civil engineering, not emotional recovery.
Exactly.
So let's get into the sources. We have the lyrics, the liner notes, the artist's breakdown. Where does this map start?
It starts in the cold. The opening lines of the song are, locked inside a winter, I was fighting off the cold.
Okay, so standard poetry rules might apply here, right? Winter. It usually means sadness, depression, something ending.
Usually, yes. But the writer's room transcript corrects that assumption right away. Ti-Fi isn't talking about sadness, they're talking about biology.
Biology.
Specifically, the freeze response.
Okay, let's pause there and unpack that, because we all know fight or flight. That's the adrenaline rush, the, action movie stuff. But freeze is the one people often forget about or just misunderstand.
It's the third option in our evolutionary survival kit. And it's misunderstood because it looks like passivity from the outside. The source material explains that when you're in a situation of entrapment, like the trafficking background the artist is referencing, fighting just gets you hurt, and fleeing is impossible. So the nervous system does something else. It shuts down, it goes dormant.
So this winter isn't a mood. It's a neurological state.
It's a survival strategy. The source describes it as a psychological winter. It's a state where your whole world just shrinks down to the immediate radius of your body. You stop planning for next year. You stop dreaming about a career. You are entirely focused on regulating your temperature.
Literally and metaphorically.
Yes. Just to survive the next hour.
That explains that terrifying line in the first verse. I couldn't help the future. I was stuck inside the old. That line really stuck with me.
And that line is the whole thesis of the freeze. Trauma can just remove the concept of a future. The artist notes that trauma welds the door to tomorrow shut. You're just in a time loop. You're not living. You're just managing stasis.
Like being in suspended animation. You're alive, but you're not going anywhere.
Exactly. And that's why the shift in the song is so jarring, because the narrative doesn't slowly thaw out. It just shifts. The chorus hits, and suddenly the narrator is walking in the sunshine.
See, this is the part of the hero's journey where I usually get a little skeptical. In the movies, the hero kicks down the door, punches the bad guy, and walks out. It's all very active, very, I did this.
And that is the exact myth this song is trying to dismantle.
Dismantle, that's a strong word.
Oh, it completely deconstructs it. The central argument of grateful for the ground, and this is the deep insight we have to wrap our heads around, is that your personal safety, it's largely owed to people the survivor has never even met.
Okay, let's unpack that. Because that sounds, it sounds a little bit like it's diminishing the survivor's own effort, doesn't it? Like, you didn't really save yourself.
I get that. It can feel that way at first. But look at the lyrics again. There's a line that I think is the most radical part of the entire track. The narrator sends gratitude to the strangers in the Senate, to the marchers in the street.
I have to admit, I laughed when I first read that. Referencing the Senate in an alt-rock song. It's not exactly sex, drugs, and rock and roll, is it? It's more like policy, bills, and bureaucracy.
It is. But think about the context. The artist is talking about escaping exploitation. How does that actually happen? It happens because there's a law that defines what's happening to you as a crime. It happens because there's a shelter that's funded by a state grant, because a definition of consent was, codified in a bill 10 years ago.
So the strangers in the Senate aren't the politicians we see arguing on cable news.
No, not at all. The source material calls them the architects of the invisible. These are the people who drafted the boring, dry legislation that eventually became the shield the survivor used. The artist calls the psalm a love letter to the invisible network of advocacy.
That is a massive perspective shift. We usually think of bureaucracy as the enemy, red tape, long lines.
Right.
But here the artist is saying that red tape might actually be a safety net.
Or a wall of strong decree, as the lyrics put it. The source makes a fascinating point here. We obsess over the moment of escape, but we ignore the infrastructure of reception. If you escape a burning building, that's great. But if there's no fire truck, no ambulance, no hospital, you're still in serious trouble.
So the marchers in the street and the strangers in the Senate,
Yeah.
they build the hospital.
They did, and they did it years before the survivor even needed it. There's this profound sense of temporal disconnect here. The artist notes that while they were locked inside the winter, someone else was sweating and straining to build the place where they would eventually recover.
The liner notes mention quiet feet. Is that referring to the same kind of group?
Similar, but I think a little more direct. The quiet feet are the peer support specialists, the pro bono lawyers, the crisis line workers, the people who don't get the glory. The source contrasts the noise of the trauma with the quiet work of that support system.
Wow. It's really beautiful when you put it that way. It completely challenges that idea of the self-made man or the self-made survivor.
The Legacy of Strength synopsis explicitly calls that a dangerous myth. It argues that while personal strength is real, you still have to walk through the door. Structural support is what builds the doorframe. You can be the strongest person in the world, but if you're standing on quicksand, you're going to sink. Grateful for the Ground is about finally acknowledging that someone else poured the concrete so you could stand.
That brings us to the next section of our outline, which deals with a really complex emotion. Because realizing you didn't do it all alone, acknowledging that help, that can feel complicated.
It leads directly to the survivor's question.
Right. The why me question. The host in that writer's room transcript talks about survivor's guilt. Why did I get to walk away? It's just such a heavy question.
It is. When you escape the life or any kind of traumatic situation and you see others who didn't, that guilt can be absolutely crushing. But the song pivots here. It tries to reframe that guilt into something else.
Reverence.
Yes, reverence. The source explains that instead of feeling bad about escaping, the listener is asked to appreciate the harvest from seeds planted by others.
I appreciate the harvest from the days you planted seed. That's such a beautiful way to look at it. It's not, I shouldn't be here. It's someone planted this specifically so I could be here.
And that connects directly to the title, right? Grateful for the ground.
Yeah, let's talk about the ground. Why not grateful for the sky or freedom? Why ground?
The source material makes this really fascinating distinction. Trauma feels like falling. It feels like drifting in space, totally unmoored. Ground implies solidity, a foundation. You can build on ground, you can stand on it.
And there's this line about kindness that I think is so crucial. For the victory of kindness that you refuse to treat as a defeat.
That is such a profound insight coming from the artist's background. In exploitative environments like the ones referenced, kindness is weakness.
Right.
It's something to be used against you.
If you're nice, you get eaten alive.
Exactly. But here, kindness is reclaimed. The systemic kindness of those advocates and policymakers isn't weakness, it's armor. It's a victory. The song argues that just maintaining kindness in a cruel world is actually a form of combat.
I love that. Kindness is armor. Now, I do want to shift gears for a second. We've been talking about a song, but we haven't really talked about what it sounds like. The Legacy of Strength source gives us some details on the sonic storytelling.
It does, and the sound is very much designed to mirror this emotional journey we've been on. The genre is described as alt-rock arena anthem.
Which implies big, sweeping energy?
It does, but it uses a very specific, quiet, loud dynamic. The source talks about how the song moves from a stripped-back, intimate confession, so think of that winter phase, whispering in the trenches, to a massive wall of sound chorus.
Lilting in the harvest.
Exactly. It's sonic expansion. It starts small, claustrophobic, and then the music literally opens up to match the sunshine and the safety the lyrics describe.
There's a quote in the liner notes that I think just perfectly captures the vibe of this song. It says, This isn't a song about fighting the dragon. It's about sitting in the quiet garden that was planted after the dragon was slain.
And that is such a rare perspective in media.
It really is. Usually we watch the movie for the dragon fight. We want the explosion, the escape, the drama.
We do. We are obsessed with the trauma event itself. But the source material emphasizes the boring, beautiful miracle of stability. The song isn't about the horror. It's about the aftermath. It's about the moment you realize you are safe enough to just sit.
The boring, beautiful miracle. I think anyone who's been through chaos knows exactly how wonderful boring can feel.
It is the ultimate luxury. And it's what that infrastructure we talked about, the laws, the safety nets, it's what it actually buys you. It buys you the right to be bored in a garden instead of fighting for your life in a winter.
So we moved from the freeze, we've recognized the invisible help, found our solid ground. But the song doesn't just end there. There's a promise at the end.
The vow of survivorship.
I promise that I treasure every lesson that you learned.
This is where the song pivots from gratitude to responsibility. The source interprets this not as a burden, but as a promise. If you are the beneficiary of all this work, if you're walking on the ground others paved for you, then you have a responsibility to use that freedom well.
So saying, I'm not going to waste this.
Exactly. It's a refusal to go back to the winter. The artist describes it as standing in the sunshine and just saying, I am here. I am reclaiming this space, and I am not going anywhere.
And then the artist does something that honestly gave me chills. They'd sort of turn the camera around and address the listener directly.
Yes. The source notes that if you are listening to this, and if you have survived something that was meant to destroy you, you are the proof that their work mattered.
That's heavy. You, the person listening right now, you are the proof.
It connects to this idea of intergenerational healing. You are the harvest of a seed of hope or justice that was planted long ago. Someone, somewhere, fought for a law or a shelter or a cultural shift, just hoping that one day someone like you would exist.
And it really makes you feel less alone. It connects your personal struggle to this massive historical timeline of survival.
It does. It validates that your survival is part of a much larger story. You aren't an isolated incident. You are a legacy.
So, to recap, we started in that psychological winter, the freeze response, where the future is just locked away. Then we realized that the thaw, the sunshine, it came from an invisible infrastructure, from strangers in the Senate and marchers in the street.
We saw how that guilt gets reframed into reverence for the ground beneath our feet. We heard how the music actually swells to celebrate that boring miracle of safety.
And finally, we took the vow. The promise to treasure the lessons and to live well as a thank you to the people who paved the way.
The main takeaway for me, looking at all these sources, is that we are all beneficiaries of a fight we didn't finish ourselves. None of us built the world entirely alone. We are all walking on ground that shifted because someone else pushed it into place.
That is a powerful place to leave it. But before we go, I want to leave you with one last thought to chew on, based on that legacy of strength idea. If we're currently walking on ground paved by others, and if we are the harvest of their seeds,
then the question becomes, what seeds are we planting today?
Exactly. What are we fighting for? What kindness are we defending that will serve as the harvest for someone else's safety, say, 20 years from now? Who will be grateful for the ground we are laying down?
That is the question.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. It was a heavy one, but a beautiful one. We'll see you next time.